Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jim R. Today's episode 198, and today's going to be something a little different. We have Kevin on the line with us, and he's going to be interviewing me today. How are you doing this evening, Kevin?
Great.
You're doing great. Glad to hear it. So, you excited to interview me?
Absolutely.
All right, let's have a good time here. So, I'm going to hand the ball over to you. It's now your court.
All right. Let's start at the beginning, Jim. Let's hear your story.
All right, so just like everyone else starts off with their childhood, I'll do the same. So, I don't remember much before I was like 11 or 12. So my parents got divorced. I was only 8. So I think that really traumatized me the way it happened and my parents hating each other. And I didn't see my mom for a long time. That really, I know it had an effect on me. Like, I didn't think my dad loved me because I got stuck with my dad. My mom didn't take us, my dad took us. And I remember in my bedroom one day just falling on purpose to see if he would come and love me. You know what I mean? Like, so we had like a pretty weird relationship because I didn't feel like I was loved. And he was abusive sometimes, verbally, mentally, physically. Like his idea of like punishment. Like one time he would ask me to clean my room and I wouldn't do it, which is okay. I'm a child. You just got to discipline him a little bit. His idea of disciplining was literally going in, ripping everything out of my drawers, throwing all my toys on the floor, leaving nothing in my room except everything on the floor, and then smacking me around and saying, "Clean your friggin' room." He used different wording, but that was his idea of punishment, and that was rough. You know what I mean? Like looking back, to be someone scared of their dad, that's not good. Shouldn't you should never fear your father. I would feel terrible if my daughter ends up fearing me.
Mhm.
I want her to be scared to disappoint me. That's what I want. Yeah, that's I think a good thing. That means you did a good job, I think. But yeah, I mean, but also I do look back and I never wanted for anything. We always had food on the table. I did have clothes on my back. It wasn't expensive clothes or anything like that, but I did have clothes. I had shoes. Um, every Friday night or every now and then, I think my dad would get us a movie on a Friday night. We'd all watch it together. So there were some good times. I can't talk all bad about it. Um, like he bought me wrestling figures and stuff. I remember I had those toys. So I remember certain things that weren't bad, but there's also a lot of bad. Like he could fuck with you mentally. Like he could make you feel terrible, like give you a guilt trip, make you feel like the worst person in the world. Um, and that really affected me also. But like moving forward a little bit, it was hard also as I got older because as the older I got, the fatter I got, and kids are like unguided missiles and they just strike all over the place and they really hurt your feelings. Gave me horrible nicknames and stuff like that. So that's another thing. So it's like you're at home where you're afraid to get hit. Now you're going to school and getting bullied. And kids, I remember one day, I forget what I did. I don't even know if I did anything. But these two kids that lived down the block, they followed me home and beat me up, made me cry. I was only like 10 years old at the time. Um, yeah, I can't really think of why they did that. It's just random. You know, that was my life. I lived in fear because I didn't want to get beat up, especially when there's more than one person. And then you go home and then your dad probably says, "What did you do?" Because it was always your fault. My dad, like even if I had a teacher that my teacher could have, done something horribly wrong, my dad would have been like, "What did you do?" It was always me. It was never, did you do something possibly that didn't deserve this? You know, I mean, maybe they went overboard. I don't know. That was something I never got from my dad. But as far as growing up in social life, I did have friends, even though I was big. I think I had more friends than I ever realized because I'm a very insecure person. So I would think some people would not like me, but I find out years later they had no problem with me. You know what I mean? Um, so I did have friends growing up
Let me
for the
ask you.
most.
I know with a lot of us addicts. I mean, for me anyway. Um, I naturally. I mean, and I didn't think about it at the time. As later, in years when I've heard other people say, and then through therapy and everything, I felt different. you know, I just naturally felt like I didn't fit in. Like you said, I had a lot. I had friends, but I just felt like I was different. There was something different about me, and my behaviors and stuff were different than other kids, and I just it's hard to put words to it, but it's just that feeling that you just didn't fit in, even though the other people didn't care. You know what I mean? We were, where I grew up, it was a whole block of kids, you know, that played constantly all together. Um, but as I got older, I realized that I just felt different. Did you feel like you felt different or?
Absolutely. It's fun. I still feel different to this day. Like I still feel like I'm not like I feel maybe I'm different, and I'm not saying in a good way either. Like I feel like maybe sometimes I'm a little weird, or maybe people don't like me. I don't know if that, it's just, it's how it comes off to me. So if someone says anything that I don't like, it's like automatically, oh, they must hate my guts. Even if you think about it, maybe they didn't mean anything by it. You know what I mean? That's just kind of my go-to. Because I now think about it, it's because my dad always blamed me for everything. So I'm used to saying it's me. It's always me. It's always me. Even though sometimes, it's really not.
Yeah, you know, and when I was your age, I felt the same. And now that I'm almost 60 years old, I just don't care what the people
Oh,
think.
I know. As you get
That,
older, and
that took a lot of years of therapy, and for me, it was 12 steps and the whole 9 yards. So it's just like, you know what? I'm me. I don't care. I don't care what you think. If you don't like what I say, I didn't say it to offend you. If it did, I apologize. But you know what? I am who I am, and I'm comfortable in my own skin now. And it's taken years to get to that point without having to have a chemical put into my body to make me feel like it's okay. You know what I mean? Now it just comes naturally. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, I definitely felt different. I remember one of the reasons I liked Elvis Presley is he had a saying where he goes, "Even in the middle of a crowded room, I feel alone."
Right. And that's when I look back at my life, that's exactly. I mean, puts it in perspective. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
absolutely. That's one of the, like I said, one of the reasons I like him. But yeah, I mean, feeling different also, it leads you to want attention sometimes, and you'll do stupid things to get it. I remember that. Like I was always trying to be the funny kid. So I was trying to also divert from the fact that I wasn't comfortable with myself. So yeah, I was always trying to be the funny guy. And I was also pretty crazy in school. As I got older, I had a really bad temper, and I would get into a lot of fights. Like if you said anything wrong to me, I would want to fight you. So I'm not saying that to be cool or I was tough. It was just I was an idiot, basically. Um, but I was drug free until I was 17,
Mhm.
and I never did anything. But then I started smoking cigarettes. So that, to me, that was my first drug.
Right.
And I started smoking mainly because of the stress I was going through with my dad. Like I would sneak out of the house, take some of my sister's cigarettes. I knew where she hid hers. She couldn't tell my dad she smoked, so she hid hers, and I would find them. And I just needed something. I couldn't take it anymore. I just needed something to help me. And I really couldn't think of anything else. So I was like, I'm gonna smoke. It helps relax me. It's disgusting, but once again, I get a buzz from it. So I don't care that it's disgusting. Um, yeah. So going on, when I first started I'm sorry, smoking cigarettes. The second thing I ever tried was marijuana. I don't really consider that, like, I consider cigarettes worse than weed, because weed, it's just different to me. Cigarettes, they give me a better buzz, to tell you the truth. I miss nicotine. It gives me a good buzz. Like if you don't smoke for a while, like if you quit smoking for like a month and then had one, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember why I started. But just like any other addiction, you start needing more and more and more, or you need to at least maintain what you're doing. Um, and then I started drinking pretty young. I feel like I want to say I was 17 or 18. I still remember one of my first drinks with my ex-girlfriend's dad. So me and my ex-girlfriend from high school, we were at her house, we were fighting. And she goes upstairs, slams her door, blah, blah. And the stepfather's like, come here for a second. Because I know it's not your fault. Don't worry about it. Come here. And he pours me a Coke and he puts a little rum in it. And I have a sip and instant relief. I was like, this is amazing. It's like, this is absolutely amazing. I remember that warm feeling when your body, you get like the chills real quick when you're having that first shot, that, and also the feeling of warmth at the same time as it goes down your throat. I still remember that every feeling. And I was like, this is it. It's like, this is what I need right here.
I have arrived.
I was just gonna say, just like Bill W said, I had arrived. Absolutely. That is no better way to put it. I didn't go hardcore though at first. Um, but then I went to join the Air Force, and the Air Force captain, or he was a sergeant, said to me, "You can't smoke weed anymore." He goes, He goes, just drink instead. He told me this when I was 18. He goes, just drink instead. He goes, you can get people to find you booze. So I dove in head first and I started drinking. Mostly at the beginning was beer, and then I would mix in whiskey with it. And the thing is, I didn't like it. It was disgusting to me, but I just wanted to get messed up. So yeah, so 18 is when I really got into it. I started drinking to just get drunk. Like that's not the sign of an addict. When you're doing something like some kids, like my brother, he enjoys beer. Like he knows what an IPA is. I don't know what any of that stuff means. Because I just drank to get drunk. So I don't know the difference between beers. I just know I drink Miller Lite, sometimes Coors Light, and I'll have other beers, but I don't know what the hell's what because I just drank to get drunk. And I would get Jack Daniels. And then I came home from the Air Force. And then I eventually, once I was like, because I was only in the Air Force for months because I had heat induced asthma and I didn't know it. So I ended up coming home early. So I was now 19, doing nothing with my life. And I had the wonderful idea of selling weed. It was actually not my idea. My buddy, I was buying weed from him. And he goes, why don't you take this ounce and break it up and sell it? And you make the money that you pay me and plus some, and then you could just pay me back. He goes, I'll spot it to you. So I started doing that. Um, and then during that time, I also got introduced to cocaine. So I don't know why. One day I was like, I'm going to be cool. It was all about being cool. And I used to love rock and roll and, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Like, oh, that's how I want to live. It's so cool. So I was like, cocaine's cool. I think I thought like it's cool because Jim Morrison did it or something like that. But so I go to snort some cocaine. I didn't really feel anything at first, but then I snorted more. And I was like, okay, I get this. I totally understand why people love it. And I ended up doing cocaine for a few years. Like I did it every day for a few years. And then one day I just decided to stop and it worked. What I did, I'm not going to lie, I smoked a shitload of weed. And then one day I was like, finally, no more smoking like that. Cause I didn't, because it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard coming off cocaine. I forget why I did it, but I did it and it worked. So I don't care, as long as the results were there, that it worked. And then eventually I got a job selling cars. I really wasn't partying that much. The only thing in my life was weed from time to time. Eventually I started smoking more and more, but it was just kids being kids. And eventually I quit. No, I never quit weed. I quit cigarettes because my ex-girlfriend at the time, she was getting surgery on her eye for something. And for some reason, the doctor said you can't smoke if you're getting the surgery. I have no idea why, but that's what he said. So we were living together, and she's like, I think we were living together, or maybe not yet. Nonetheless, she said, can you quit with me? So I quit with her. And, because I love the girl at the time. She was a good girl. I look back, she was a good girlfriend, and I treated like shit. I was a terrible boyfriend. Terrible. Um, but yeah, another addiction I had was sex. Like this girl was a good girlfriend, and she had a graduation party. Her dad like rented out a hall. They're all having a good time. And I leave early to go be with another girl just to do something real quick. You know what I mean? And then that was it. Like that was the kind of shit I did. I was so drunk. Went to get her a card, and instead of getting her a graduation card, I accidentally bought her a birthday card. And everybody was like laughing, like, "What are you like? That's ridiculous." I just didn't realize I was really drunk. I was really drunk. And keep in mind, I'd be driving around everywhere. I can't count the times I drove and drank and drove, and I feel terrible for it because it's like, dude, I put other people's lives at jeopardy, and like looking back as an adult, I'm really ashamed of those things. I should have never done that, and I hope my daughter learns not to do that stuff. I'm going to tell her the stories, but I'm going to save the picture of my car when I crash it because I think I still have it. Say this is what happened to Daddy. Um, but yeah, so the cocaine went on for a few years, and then what was I on next? I did a lot of ecstasy. Then I did shrooms. Did that a few times. And then eventually moving forward to when I was like um 26, 27, I got introduced to what do you call it? Painkillers. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I was much younger. This was much younger. I was like 23 and I got introduced to painkillers. Because yeah, 27 is when I broke up with that girl, and it was years before I did painkillers. And she would do it with me. We were both on the painkillers. And I did it every night. Like I was always on something. Well, and then yeah, I was always on something. I never not, but I've never been like 100% clean. And the painkillers I loved. Let's call it what it is. They were great. I felt great. It made me feel better. I had confidence. I felt like I did better at work. But I usually didn't take them during work. But at the time, I was also doing good. I was making a lot of money. Life was a bit easier back then. And then eventually my bipolar kicked in, kind of like overdrive. That has a lot to do with my drug use because I was so up and down. I was self medicating. When you look back and you just analyze what I've been through and the things I did, you can tell that I self medicated.
Did you know at the time? I mean, you just acknowledged bipolar, but did you know at that point that you were bipolar, or were you just self medicating because you felt that way, but you didn't know you were bipolar?
I didn't know I was bipolar till there's an incident. Like I said, I was known to be the fighter. Like you
Mm-hmm.
didn't mess with me. People thought I was crazy because I was. I was unmedicated my whole life. And one day I was at a gas station, or not a gas station, a place where you get your oil changed. And the guy does my oil change. And keep in mind, at the time, I worked for a car dealership. So when he pulled the car out, my check engine light came on. And I was like, dude, can you do me a favor? Can you just run the code? You know how they run the code? I'm like, can you find out what's wrong, run the code, and then just give me the paper and I'll take it to my work? And he's like, I didn't fucking do that. And I was like, dude, can you just help me out? I go, it wasn't on before. I don't care if you did anything. I'll get it fixed. Don't worry about it. And he started being a jerk. So I remember because he was over the counter, and they always have their computer right there. I took the keyboard and threw it at him. And then I think I went after the monitor and threw that also. And I jumped over at it and I went to attack him. And everybody got me off. It was a friggin' big thing. One guy says, listen, I know he's an asshole, but get out of here before you get arrested. And I left. And I went home and told my girlfriend the story. And something needs to change. I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
And then her mother said, maybe you should go see this doctor. She helped one of my friends, their daughter, something like that. And I went to the doctor and she said, it sounds like you're bipolar. Sounds like you have depression. And because I remember one of the first things she asked me, she goes, so how do you feel usually on any given day? I go, which person are you talking to right now?
Right.
I go, the guy who gets up and has energy and he's on top of the world, he's the best guy in the world, or the guy that's sitting home crying for no reason.
Right.
I was like, I don't know which one you're asking me, but I go, and she goes, okay, I guess you. So she put me on a bunch of medications, some that I still take to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then she put me on the medication and it did work. It calmed me down completely changed my life. I was able to control myself. I still got angry sometimes. I still had a bit of a temper. Um, Yeah. The so I mean the painkillers I loved. We kept moving forward a little bit. I kept doing the painkillers, and then eventually we got to around 27. So this was like 17 years ago or 12 years ago. I'm sorry. That I broke up with my ex-girlfriend. So I went out, I was ready to get married and ask her to marry me, and I totally backed out. And her family was pissed about it because they knew. So I asked her dad for permission. And then I had to call him and say, listen, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I told her at the time, she got real upset. And she eventually left. I would have left too. You know what I mean? But so also at work, I was saying before, just going back to work for a moment, I think it's funny how addicts always, because I hear the same story every time. Oh, I always did good at work, blah, blah, blah. I always find it how addicts equivalent doing good at work and making money to meaning their life is okay. Like to
Right.
me, my life was okay. I did good at work. I had money. I didn't have to want for anything. I did whatever I wanted. I wanted a motorcycle. I went out and bought one. Then I bought a second one. Um, and I always said, I don't have a problem. A problem means it's affecting my life, and it's not affecting my life. Everything was in my mind fine. Like I had no emotional issues addressed, none of that. I got the doc. We talked a little bit, but it wasn't like a therapist. She just mostly prescribed the medication, and I never really went to therapy. I always believed that it wouldn't work. Um, so eventually, like I said, I broke up with my ex girlfriend, and from there, I stopped doing the painkillers. The only reason is I did the painkillers. Actually, no, I did them probably for another 2 years, I should say. Now that I think about it, so I remember. But the thing was, eventually, it dropped from OxyContin to morphine, and most people don't know OxyContin is stronger than morphine. So I didn't know that at the time. I thought when my buddy was selling me morphine, it was stronger than OxyContin. I didn't know that. So, but I kept saying like, why do I not feel as good? Blah blah blah. So I thought maybe my body had just gotten totally used to it. Then me and my buddy Johnny, we are friends again now. We got into a shoving match, and we got into a huge fight. I spilled coffee on him on purpose, and then we didn't talk. So he was my only connection for I'm sorry for what do you call it? Painkillers.
Right.
So I couldn't. I had to go through withdrawal, and I didn't have any help. I just basically locked myself in my room, laid in bed for days. I had diarrhea. I was sweating. I was cold. I was throwing up. I don't know if anyone, if anyone is going through or has gone through that type of withdrawal, they know what I'm talking about. You open,
Anytime, many times.
yeah, so
It wasn't just once for me. It was every time I ran out of money.
yeah, yep, that's the way it works. Just like all happened was I ran out of my supply. I could no longer had access to it. But that was right around the time I started drinking because I had never. So I did drinking when I was younger, like I said, but right around 19, I stopped drinking. From there on in, it was drugs only until I was 28, 27, 28 range. Then I started drinking, and I had broken up with my ex girlfriend. I got into a huge fight with my buddy. We called him Mush. I don't know if you can't really notice, but like it might look like one of my eyes is a little smaller than the other. It's because I had surgery because he had hit me in the face with a beer bottle, and it broke my. I think it's the orbital bone. Is that what it's called? Um, so they had to patch that up, and to me, I look different now, technically because my eyes are a little smaller. Um, but so I lost my best friend, and I felt all alone. So I started drinking a lot, and then it started off with like drinking maybe like three or four. No, it started off less than that, like two or three shots, and I would be okay. It would make me feel drunk, or at least make me feel buzzed enough that I felt okay. And then, just like anybody else's story, it progressed. Then it came up to 3 to 4 drinks a night, then 5 to 6 drinks a night, then 7 to 8 drinks a night. And I'm not going to keep going on because it'll be too much. But and I was doing straight shots of whiskey. I always did shots because, well, actually no, I did both. What I would do in the beginning was I take a shot and chug it behind a beer with as the finisher, whatever you want to call it. Um, I did that for a while, but then I wanted to lose weight. So, well, actually, no. Then I started. Yeah, I started. I wanted to lose weight, so I started making rum and cokes. And then I was like, you know what? The coke is a waste. It makes me full, and I could drink more if I just do straight rum. So I started taking shots, and from there on in, I just did straight shots. It was always like a whiskey, a bourbon, or I did rum for a long time. Rum was my jam, and I went through a period. I call it the dark times, where there were times I didn't have money for food. I had to go steal food. I was all by myself, just drinking. I wasn't taking my medication at that point in time. So I was in a friggin' emotional and mental tailspin. It was really, really a dark time. I probably smelled like shit, but I wasn't, nobody ever noticed because when I went out, I would shower. But when I was by myself, there were times I didn't shower for weeks. Weeks. It was disgusting. Like I look back and it's disgusting. You know what I mean? Like nowadays, if I go 2 days without showering, it's like, come on, Jimmy, get the fuck in the shower and let's go. But back then, it wasn't like that. I would be taking wipes and wiping myself down when it probably took more time to wipe myself down than it would have to hop in the shower. I don't know what it was. Um, didn't brush my teeth. I was. I always said addiction is a very lonely place to be, especially like when it gets bad. Addiction is a lonely place to be. It was a bad thing. Well, it ended up being a good thing that I didn't have any drinking buddies. I always drank alone because in the end, I would find that might have been hard when I got out of rehab to not talk to my friends anymore. But when you don't have friends like that, you're okay. You don't have to worry about it. Um, so I had no drinking buddies. It was very lonely. I didn't have many friends. I did have a lot of friends, but I didn't talk to anybody. Like I didn't keep in touch. I didn't invite people over, but I would eventually talk to some people and they'd be like, dude, I haven't seen you forever. Come over. So if I really wanted to, I could have had a better life. But a lot of times I was just drinking. Like that was all there was to it. Someone would call me. I'm already 3 drinks deep. Sorry, I can't drive and I don't want to meet you now. I want to just sit home and get drunk. That was what I wanted. And it was a very lonely place to be. But eventually I came, how long? It took probably 2 years to come out of those dark times. And I eventually started working in New York City. And there I drank a lot because I remember when I first went back to work, this is when I knew it was bad. I went back because I was on unemployment for a while. And part of the dark times was it was this bad. So I would get $400 a week in unemployment. And then from there, I was behind on rent. So I had a payment plan where I paid $300 a week. So I only got paid 400. So with the other 100, I was able to afford a big box of ramen noodle with like, the 10 pack. And then I would also have enough money for a carton of cigarettes and one big bottle of rum. And that was my rations for the week. That went on for like a year or two. It was very, very sad. It was very sad. Um, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Like I know what it feels like to have been through really bad times. But eventually I came out of them. I don't remember when. I know I went back to work eventually and I came out of them. But even when I went back to work, I was about to say the reason I knew I had a problem was at lunch, I had to go get a drink. I felt like I need a fucking drink. Pardon my language. I gotta stop dropping F bombs. But I was like, I need a friggin' drink. So I would go and drink on lunch. And then one of the worst things was I got really cool with one of the managers. He was my direct boss. He loved to drink. It was weird. I was an addict, but when we went out during the day, I wouldn't drink because once I start, I can't stop where I feel like I want to go home. I'm gonna feel crappy. If I start drinking and don't continue all the way through, I don't feel well. So I'd rather not drink, wait till I get home and I can continuously drink till I pass out. So that was the end goal, was just to fall asleep. Well, I look back through therapy and things like that, like you said, and a lot of self-analyzation that, I was doing it to mask emotional pain and things like that. And I was trying to self-medicate myself, especially when I wasn't on my medication. I mean, I remember having anxiety so bad, I would start shaking like out of nowhere and have to like hold my hands real tight and like my body would shake real quick and then it would eventually calm down. Like I would shake like I was shivering from being outside in the cold. There was a shiver. It was weird. I don't know. Have you ever had that?
Um, well, my my disease, it progressed a lot worse. I mean, you're saying that you couldn't drink during the day, because you wanted to go home and drink. I had to maintain that, or I would shake. So I don't know if it was the anxiety or my body would detox. If I had to drink at least every hour,
Wow.
or I'd start shaking. In the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd wake up shaking. And that's why I always had a bottle of vodka hidden next to my bed somewhere because I could take a shot and go back to sleep.
And that's part of the reason I said I don't have a problem because I don't. I was like, look, I can control myself. I don't drink during the day.
Right.
I can obviously handle it, but I had to drink every night. I always had to drink. Like I
Yep.
felt like I needed to. Like it was your brain craves it, and it's amazing because I learned later on in life how much alcohol affects your entire brain. When you do opiates or crystal meth or cocaine, it affects certain areas of your brain. With alcohol, and I believe also Xanax, but maybe not Xanax, but it affects the entire brain, which is no good. That's why alcohol you can possibly die from withdrawal, and heroin you don't, or crack you don't. You just feel like you're going to die. That's the
But
difference.
benzos, you can. Benzos is the
Yeah,
same as
no,
alcohol.
benzos and alcohol are the only two things. No, that I know. Um, but yeah, so I continued to drink. I was alone for a while. Like I stay alone a lot. I don't like going out. If I do want to meet someone, it's usually just for sex. I don't really want a relationship. But then out of nowhere, I do want relationships. I'm like all over the place. I do and I don't. I do and I don't. Once again, I'm bipolar. Welcome to my world. That's just the way it is. Um, So there's a lot of times where I stay alone for a few years. Like, I'm doing it right now. But part of the reason I've been a few years basically celibate, whatever you want to call it, without a girlfriend, is because you're not supposed to have a girlfriend if you don't think you can handle it yet. And I'm still working on myself. I'm in good shape, but I want to maintain that.
Yeah, and I've learned too that um, you may feel that you're ready for a relationship, but the way I look at it is, am I am I worthy? Am I? It's not that I'm not worthy, but what do I have to offer to the relationship? You know what I mean? Um, like right now, I mean, the way I feel, you know, I, I you know, I want to fall in love and everything. I'm 60 years old. It hasn't been a lot. It's been a long time, but what do I have to contribute to the relationship right now? You know what I mean? I
Yeah, that's how I felt.
don't know. I'll get to that point at some point. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but right now I'm just, I'm not ready for a relationship at all, and I recognize that and I'm okay with it. It's not like, oh, poor me, but it's just, I, because I've done it. I've tried it, and it didn't work. It's just like, you know, I'm not ready, and there, hopefully before I die, that time will come. But I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it'll happen. I think it will for you. You're a nice guy. You know what I mean? It's just about, it's not even about whether you can or you're not, can or can't, you can, but it's about just meeting people. You need to
Right,
have a spot where you can go meet people.
right.
Kind of sucks, most people go to the bar to meet people. That's kind of thing that's a downer. But yeah, I mean, I knew I had problems. I kind of recognized it, but I was kind of also just in denial. So it's like I knew it, but then I was like, nah, blah, blah, blah. Um, but even once I realized I had a problem, I didn't give a shit. I was like, you know what? This is how it's going to be the rest of my life. I'm going to do alcohol and pills and whatever I want. And that's just the way it is. Like, I remember even saying that to my cousin one day. Like, she came over and I was like, this is it. That's my life. I go, I drink every single day, every day. I also, around this time, I got into Adderall, one of my other true loves. I have a few true loves in my life, and Adderall was one of them. Helped me lose weight and gave me energy. I would stay up for 3 days. I remember one time I was up for so long, I looked down and my ankles, or swollen like you couldn't believe. I couldn't fit them in my shoes all the way. Thank God I had a really soft pair of shoes that I was able to, the leather was able to bend enough. Um, so I go to the hospital and they said, you've been standing. I literally, Kevin, was standing up for 3 days playing
Right.
my guitar. I was recording songs. So I was standing up for 3 days. I would only sit down for maybe a half hour, then stand up for two, sit down for half. Because I would go edit it for a little bit, then like, all right, I need to do this part again. And that happened a few times. Then a couple times I would drink so much, my whole body would be blotchy. Like
Yep.
everywhere on my body would just have red blotches. And I just was, it didn't matter. And then also the worst was getting cramps. I remember I'd wake up getting cramps in the middle of the night because I was so dehydrated.
Right.
All the fun stuff. I mean, there were times where I drank so much I threw, like I couldn't help it. I didn't do it on purpose. It just came out. And I remember one time I puked in my kitchen sink, and then right there was the bottle. I was like, all right, that came up. The other one. It was just like, dude. I look back and it's like, you're stupid, man. It's amazing. It's amazing how disgusting you could be. You know what I mean? You're throwing up and then taking a shot. Like not, you're not even giving yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You're just doing it immediately. The bottle's right there. Doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I can relate because that was an every morning routine for me. Unfortunately, every morning for years, I'd have to take a shot, and I knew it was going to puke it up, and then right away, I'd have to do another one until it finally stayed down, so I wouldn't be sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a shame, but hey, that's what life was for a while.
Yeah. And also another thing that changed my life was around the age of 27, I lost my license. So I'm a car salesman. Don't worry, I'm a good one. I'm very nice to people and I don't lie. But um, I'm a car salesman, so you can't sell cars without a license because you got to. You're on. What happens is once you go to that place, you have to be put on the company insurance policy, and that can't happen unless you have a license. So you're beat if you can't do that. Um, the funny part was this was before I was a drinker, so I'm backtracking a little bit. Let's go back just a few years to when I was 27. I was at a party. I got so ridiculously drunk, I pissed my pants. I was making a fool of myself. And my friend, I look back and say he's a jerk because he tells me to leave. And now I'm hammered going to drive my car. You know what I mean? I ended up crashing the two cars on Main Street in Belmar, New Jersey. That's where everybody is during the summer. They're walking down the boardwalk right there. They're all over the sidewalks. And I crashed into two parked cars, thank God, and nobody was in them. I got arrested. I lost my license. And that's when the drinking got even heavier. Then it got real heavy. It's funny. I wasn't a drinker. I only drank for a few years when I was like 18, like I said, because I couldn't smoke weed at the time. But then later on, I didn't, so I didn't like it. And then all of a sudden, I get into an accident because I drank that one time. Well, I was drinking a lot at the time, but not alcoholically. It was more party mode. Then I get into the accident, and that sends me in my downward spiral because I was so depressed. I couldn't do anything. I'm sitting there without a license, have no car because my car I crashed, have no way to get to the store. I mean, I would walk to the supermarket during those dark times. It was a sad life. I would walk to the supermarket with my book bag, put everything in there, and then head back home. I was very like, I couldn't believe I didn't have a car. It was never like that before. You know what I mean? To me, that was a bad thing. I was like, this really is terrible. I was like, you're pathetic. Um, but eventually I met my ex-girlfriend and she hated my drinking. So we fought about that a lot. And it made me a bad boyfriend, I think. Because if I would have quit for her, God, who knows what may have happened? We might have been still together. Who knows? And she's the mother of my daughter. So, but at the end of the day, she's a mean little girl. So she can say things on purpose to really hurt you and just stab you in the heart. So she was an abusive girlfriend. So I have to look back. And she said it. She was right. She used to try and break up with me and say, Jimmy, we're toxic for each other. And I was like, no, no, it's just the way it is. We fight sometimes and don't worry about it. We're different. We'll make it through. Once we get ourselves on our feet, it was always once we do this or once we do that, it'll be better. And it just never was. So during those years, life was pretty uneventful. I had jobs. I wasn't like, I was a functioning alcoholic. So once again, I said to anybody, don't say anything to me. I don't drink during the day. I'm doing good at work. I'm one of the best salesmen, blah, 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 blee, blee, blee. And no, I said nobody could say anything to me. So I guess we have to fast forward to I'm 37 now. And my ex-girlfriend's breaking up with me again. I know she's pregnant though, and I'm trying to keep her. So she mentions a detox thing, and I never thought of it. I didn't even know what detox was. I didn't know there was a detox place. Um, so I look it up and I start saying that I'm going to go. So I call her up and I'm like, Nikki, can you come by? I love you. I want to tell you about how I'm going to this detox just for you, blah, blah, blah. I actually get her to come over. We had already broken up. In my mind, I was trying to keep her. I'm like, oh, she's still my girlfriend. She doesn't realize it. And do you know what I did before she comes over? I got
Yeah,
drunk
yeah.
and I
What we
popped
all.
some and I popped some Klonopin. She gets there and I'm telling her about this detox. She's like, I can smell alcohol on you. But this is the truth. The guy for the rehab said to me, he goes, do not cold turkey it. He goes, I'm not telling you to get hammered, but he goes, don't just stop drinking right at this moment. He goes, wait till you get here. He goes, it's dangerous if you have to wait a few days. We don't want you starting to get, DTs and stuff like that. So I told her that, even though I did drink too much, I could have drank less. And we get into a huge fight. She shoves me down the stairs. The next day I had bruises all over me. We get into a huge fight. Keep in mind she's pregnant at this time. I take her phone and smash it into the wall, break it into a million pieces. Get it, and then she goes downstairs, and I go and I corner her. And I don't remember like what was going through my head because the thing is I don't hit women, so it doesn't matter. Like I was probably just gonna scream at her in her face, but she ends up running away. I go to chase her, and then I see other people around looking at what's going on, and I just went back to my apartment. I was like, screw this. And the police come, I get arrested. She threw me down the freaking stairs and she didn't get arrested, but that's okay. I I shouldn't have drank. Um, and that I don't. So the next morning I wake up and I don't really remember all that. I only remember this after years of getting my brain power back. Because your brain heals, eventually you can remember stuff. But at the time, I wake up the next morning. Oh, you want to hear how pathetic I am? The police, when they were arresting me, I just went. I'm like, I can make bail, but I think I said that, or I just said I have nobody to drive me home once you're done with processing. So he was just like, I'll drive you. So they take me to jail. They throw me in the cell. They say just hang out for a little bit. They do their little background check or whatever they're doing, and then the guy comes and drove me home. So I give him props for that. I was pathetic. And he saw, and I even said to them, I go, I'm supposed to be going through a rehab in 2 days. So I think that was part of it, his being nice to me. Um, and I get home and I remember the next morning waking up, just starting hysterical crying, like, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? How did this how did this happen? What did you do? What the hell did you do, Jimmy? How could you? You're so stupid. You're an idiot. And that's when I said, I need to go to rehab, really. Because at first I was telling my ex, like, I'm going to go, but there was a chance I was going to then back out of it if she took me back because I wasn't 100% in for it. But I said, after that, I need to go to get help. And part of it was I was still trying to get my ex girlfriend back. I still wanted her back. I thought there's still hope for it because I was an idiot. And I went to rehab and it saved my life. It's a place called Discovery Institute in Marlboro, New Jersey. And it saved my life. When I first got there, I was like, here we go with the God shit. Because the 12 steps were up there. And, unfortunately, when you first look at it, it's got a lot of God. And for me personally, I'm not religious. I'm not an atheist. I'm agnostic. So most people, if you read the big book, there's a whole section for agnostics. So that's what Bill W was. And I get there and I just start crying again. I'm like, dude, how did it come to this? You're in a rehab facility. You're a 37-year-old man, and you can no longer handle your life. You're a loser, basically. And I remember one morning waking up and just start smashing pillows and throwing them against the wall because I needed to get my anger out, but I didn't want to break anything. Like typically I would put my fist through a wall or something. If I was home, I would have destroyed my house. I would have kicked my door in or some shit. Cause I used to do stuff like that all the time. But what really got me in there where I was like, okay, I'm here to stay was when I was in the detox part of the rehab that you go there for 7 days and then you go to residential. The detox guy had a detox, would have a meeting every morning at like 10 a.m. And he was always like, you don't have to come if you don't want to. He goes, I'm not forcing you to. He goes, you do what you want. So that was one thing. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm like, all right. Because I'm one of those people, if you tell me to do something, I don't want to do it. I'm a pain in the ass like that, or I'll be more reluctant to do it if you kind of force me into doing something, especially if I'm not sure I'm gonna like it. And then one guy said something to me, and he said it nicely. He's it kind of sounds rude, but he said it just like this. He goes, that door goes both ways. If you don't like it, you can leave. Nobody's keeping you here. Nobody is forced to stay here. Literally no one in that building. Even if you're under court order, you can just leave, but you'll go to jail. You have to choose. Do you want to sit here or do you want to go to jail? Um, so yeah, that got me in there. And then they handed me a pocket-sized version of the blue book, the big book. I'm sorry, the big book. And I was highlighting everything, underlining so much because it I got past the God stuff and I saw it for what it was, which was a good recovery book. And the thing was, when you read all these stories, you relate to them. The same exact reason we're doing this right now. And I have the podcast. And like I said before, we've done 190 interviews plus, is because people relate to these stories and it makes them feel better and it makes them feel not alone. So when I read the stories, it made me feel not alone. And a lot of what Bill W. wrote there, the first 164, I think it is, that's the basic text. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So for anyone who hasn't read it, read it. I don't care if you're a drug addict, if you're a food addict, if you're a sugar addict, read the big book. Just replace it with okay, sugar. Or for Overeaters Anonymous, they just take the big book and they just change the word from drinker to overeater, I think. Stuff like that. That's what they do. And I went there. It was March of 2020. And guess what happened in March of 2020?
COVID.
COVID broke out. So I'm in rehab. We're watching the news every day. It's getting worse and worse. Everyone in the rehab's like freaking out. And I was like, I don't want to stay here. I'm like, what if my ex-girlfriend needs me? What if my family needs me? I'm thinking there's going to be riots in the street. You know what I mean? Because I'm crazy at the time. I was still reprogramming my brain to go back to somewhat normalcy. So I was still thinking a little crazy. And I eventually left detox on the 8th or 9th day. And this is where our 10 steps, this is where our program came from. Because I got out and I was alone, brother. Everything shut down. Doctors' offices were shut down. Everyone, therapists, the AA meetings, they eventually went to Zoom. But when you got on one of those meetings, there was like 50 people on there. Nobody was really able to talk. And if they did, you had like a 2-minute time limit, which there's really not much to get off in 2 minutes, especially if you're having issues, which I was at the time. So I got big into Buddhism. I studied that a lot. Really, the meditating saved my life. I need to get back into that. I've been lazy with that. Because you just contemplate a lot of things. You really think things through before you do them, especially if you have a big decision to make. Just meditate on it. Because that's what Bill W. did. In the big book, I think I looked it up. I think they mentioned meditation 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that really helped me, the meditation and just trying to be a better person. I just want to be a good dad. I don't want to disappoint my daughter. I don't want to disappoint my daughter or my mother. I want my mother's always worried if I'm going to be okay or not. And I want her to know that I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make it through life and I'll be okay. But like I said, discovery saved my life. It got me detoxed. I was now sober. But when I get home, first thing I do is I go to bed. I wake up the next morning. My mirror was to my left. I just look over there. And just for like what 10th time I've said this in the story, I start crying again. I'm a big crier. And I was like, nothing's changed. I still feel awful right now, except I don't have any booze. I was like, nothing's changed. And then one day, I don't know why, I changed my bed, and instead of having it right flat against the wall, I put it in the corner. You know what I mean? So it was on like an angle from the front door of my bedroom. So I put it on a corner, and then I was like, I'm going to redo my apartment. I was like, because it feels, it's like I returned to the scene of a crime. That's how I felt. I hated it. My apartment smelled. It's disgusting. I didn't take care of it. During the dark times, I had maggots in my garbage. During the dark times, I didn't change my garbage for weeks or months sometimes. It was bad. I had flies in the house, a lot of flies. And then I met my ex-girlfriend. She made me get it clean. She said it was disgusting. Um, but yeah, like I said, this is also where a lot of the program comes from that we have. Because first thing I had to do was learn to love myself. That was something I had problem with. Another thing was I didn't have any discipline at that point. So what I did also was I started making my bed every morning because it gave me for some reason it felt good.
Yeah.
Actually, somebody in the rehab told me make your bed every morning. I even ended up reading a book about making your bed by this guy General McCraven, and he was a big I think the Navy or the Marines, one of those, and I think it's the Marines. And he talks about how that is something that you should do as well and why you should do it, things like that. Um, and then basically, I just worked my ass off. I got disciplined, and I needed to work hard, which is the third pillar. And then eventually, I built our community. I needed a community, and I couldn't find one that was working for me. So it was actually one day during meditation out of nowhere. I just said the words. I go, Addicts Anonymous. I don't even know why I was thinking that. And I was like, I wonder if that's taken. I look it up and it's not. There's all Addicts Anonymous, I think. But they're not even an active group. I think it's someone that tried to start it and they gave up.
It's called DAA, Drug Addicts Anonymous.
Oh, there's another one. Yeah, there's tons of A's. So I was like, you know what? Let me start a group. And I didn't know really what the group was going to do at first. Then eventually I had the idea of meetings. Um, One of our first meetings, a group member actually suggested the chips. She said that would be really cool if you could do that. So I was like, hell yeah, we could do that. Um, and then I just worked really hard with the group. And talking about drugs and stuff, I I cut all that out. It was just done. I was I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Good old fashioned saying. It's there for a reason because I was doing dangerous stuff. I was talking about snorting Adderall before. I would be snorting Adderall and then I break up some Klonopin and mix it together, and then eventually switch over to straight Klonopin, and then I would drink to fall asleep. There were so many times I went to bed with these awful pains in my chest, and I was like, I'm gonna freaking die. I was like, I'm dying right now, and I was probably overdosing to a certain degree. But I would just say, hopefully, I wake up, and I would try to go to sleep. Eventually, I'd pass out, and I'd be surprised when I woke up. I'm like, oh, I'm still here. So I was doing dangerous things. Like at the time, it didn't seem dangerous to me because you never think you're going to die. It's like, no, not me. I can handle that. Um, but yeah, I was just done, man, completely done. And I was working on this group. The community is really important. I love everything we've done so far. Thank you for all your help. You're a big
Yep.
part of the group. Um, but that's what I do nowadays. Is I have a full time job, but I also this is like a second full time job. You see how much stuff we have to do keep this group going. Um, and I'm sober, and that's all that matters. There's certain things that I do, like I said before, you got to work hard at everything you do. You need to have some discipline, get up, go to work, eat right, sleep right. I'm still working on eating better. It's still something that I'm a little guilty of, not following my own advice right there. But life is so much better sober.
Yeah.
It sounds so cliche, but ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, life is so much better sober. Really is. Your brain eventually, like it took me about a year and a half, and eventually I remembered what happened that night with my ex-girlfriend because eventually at first I couldn't remember. And then I find out that your brain takes about 2 to 3 years to somewhat come undone. You have permanent brain damage technically once you're an alcoholic, depending on your obviously your amount. And I was drinking a lot. Um, Another thing I've been lucky about is I've never had a drug dream, and I've never been tempted yet. I mean, it's been in front of me, but I've never like I even went on a date one time. And the girl I was going to her house, and she's like, "Can you pick me up a 6 pack?" So I was like, "Yeah." I went in the store. I got her a 6 pack. I had no desire for any of that stuff.
Mhm.
So I've been lucky where I was removed. Um, so that's something good for me because I guess I said, like I said, I'm also lucky because I had no friends that I drank with. So the only thing I had to do was just steer clear of the liquor store. But even so, I still go to Acme Pharmacy and Acme the store to go buy my groceries. And right next door is a liquor store, and those guys know me. Like they know me. They used to spot me. Like sometimes I wouldn't have the money. They'd be like, "Just come back when you get the money." You know what I mean? And I don't go in there anymore. They lost a real good customer, and I'm happy to say that.
Yep.
But yeah, life is better sober nowadays. That's what I do to keep clean. I just always stay busy because an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Right.
You need to keep busy. No matter what you do, you have to figure out something in your life that you're going to be passionate about. I think everybody could find a passion. I think everybody needs to find a passion, even if that's your child. Be passionate about being a father or a mother. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be chess or golf. It doesn't have to be a hobby or something. It could be like this is my passion. Helping people is my passion. It gives me a high. So I kind of selfish about it because it gets me in a good mood. It makes me feel better when someone says thank you, Jim. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna lie, it does feel good. And the Dalai Lama calls it being a wise selfish because he's like, you could be selfish and do things to make yourself feel good. Maybe you could find something that also helps people at the same time,
Right.
and that's okay. So I think I'm in a good state of mind right now.
Yeah.
But I usually ask people at the end of the episode if they have advice for anyone. So I'm thinking about my advice. And my advice would be, first of all, you have to want it. If you don't want it, don't just keep doing what you're doing. You're fine then. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that being an idiot, but you have to want it. If you don't want it, think about reasons why you should want it. There's probably plenty of reasons you should want it. Also, stick with it once you try it, because in the beginning, it's not going to make sense. You're not going to enjoy it. And it's going to be hard because you're not going to want to quit. So in the beginning, it's always going to be hard. So you have to stick with it through the thick and the thin. Do your time. It's better than going to jail. It's better than dying. Those are your other options. There really are no other ones. Um, and use the community that you have. Find yourself one. If you're not part of it, join Addicts Anonymous. We'd love to have you. It's a great group. People respond immediately if you're there and you need help, you're not feeling well. Some people will be there right for a phone call. We have a virtual sponsorship program where we can actually set you up with a sponsor or make sure that you have the right sponsor. Maybe that won't work. We'll find you another one and we'll place you till we find the right sponsor for you. And just be active. Keep your brain busy. It's better off that you're helping someone while you're being active because it makes you feel good. Like I said, it'll give you a little nice buzz. So it's kind of like getting a little shot of whatever you used to do, get some dopamine released in your brain. And I think that's about it for my advice.
Awesome.
So I think I'm done here. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I think we covered it all. Any
Yeah, I think I
questions?
covered
Up?
everything.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
everybody, I hope they enjoyed it. I hope now people have my story. So hopefully people will enjoy it. I tried to do my best and I hope I was honest and good for it. So sit tight for a second, Kevin. Let me give our little sales pitch. For everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, and first of all, what I should do is before I get into the sales pitch, Kevin, thank you so much.
Okay.
I just want to say
For
thank you.
Huh?
I want to say thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. No, this is what we do. You
Yep.
know?
Yep. I said, first and foremost, let me thank you. Now let's get into the sales pitch. If you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on all social media platforms like Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and TikTok. I also suggest checking out our website, www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of free resources and literature. If you need anything else as far as resources, you can always reach out to me personally. I am Jim R, JIMR, at addicts-anonymous.com. You can email me for anything you need at all. If you want to maybe do an interview on the podcast also, we're always looking for new guests. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time.